You're locked in to the hottest station on the planet.
Resistance is futile. The revolution has begun.
You're listening to Rebelpreneur Radio, helping you break the rules and build the business you need for the life you want. And now, broadcasting his pirate signal
from somewhere beyond the status quo,
here's your host, best-selling author, marketing and media strategist, Ralph Brogden.
Hello and welcome to Rebelpreneur Radio. It's the show that helps you build the business you need so you can live the life you want. I'm Ralph Brogden. You know, a great leader, a great spokesperson, Mr. Zig Ziglar said, you can have anything in the world you want if you first help other people get what they want. And we have really had some great conversations here lately about the idea of helping others, serving others, even loving our customers, our clients, our prospects, serving them all, loving them all, and letting God sort out the buyers and the not buyers. It's taking the discussion about business to a spiritual level and realizing that the purpose of business is not just to make you money, but it is to transform the world, make the world a better place, and create the shifts in people's lives that they need to make so that they can accomplish the things that they want to accomplish. And so I'm real excited and feel very privileged that today's guest is going to speak to this from the perspective of the science of helping others. And I'm speaking with Dr. Richard Shuster. He is a clinical psychologist, keynote speaker, CEO of Mars Industries, a renowned media expert, and the host of the Daily Helping podcast, which is regularly downloaded in over 100 countries. His mission is to help people become the best versions of themselves and to make the world a better place. Dr. Richard, welcome to Rebelpreneur Radio.
I'm so excited to be here, Ralph. I've been just thinking about this signal that you talked about. We're on a pirated signal, so I'm waiting for the black helicopters to come, take us down here. But we'll use the time we've got, and we'll have some fun, and hopefully we can help some people. Well,
they can't find us because it is a pirate signal. It's coming from an undisclosed location on my compound out in the country, and it's surrounded by a fence, and so nobody can get in. They can't find us. And that gives us all the freedom and the flexibility to break the rules in a good way so that we can change the world. And so you've been at this for quite some time, helping others with your the Daily Helping podcast and all the other speaking and things that you have going on. I want to get into that. First, though, tell us how you got started and what was your journey like to get you to this place?
Pretty different than what I would have expected if you had come up to me when I was just getting out of college and told me, what the next 20 years of my life would look like. And it's interesting. I had a very good upbringing, and I was privileged to have down-to-earth, hardworking parents. My dad was an entrepreneur. My dad was a dentist, and so I was often hanging around the office as a kid, and I had the examples of a dad who would teach me the value of helping others. He would often give away dentistry to kids where the parents couldn't afford to fix their kids' smiles and things of that nature. So I always had those examples. My mom was a school teacher before I was born, and then I was lucky to have a stay-at-home mother. So I had really humble, down-to-earth, hardworking parents. And when I got out of college, something kind of changed in me, and I don't know if it was just you get into the corporate world and you get excited about climbing the ladder and doing all these glorious things. And so I kind of likened myself to who I had become of the character that was in that movie Family Man with Nicolas Cage. Before he woke up and realized he had a family, I became extraordinarily focused on money, really just building an empire, having material things. And I want to preface our discussion today by saying I am in no way anti-capitalism, anti-entrepreneurial, but I think there was a period in my life where I wanted things for the wrong reasons. And then I bid on a government contract with the Department of Defense in my early 20s that I had no business winning, and I won it. And so all of a sudden now, I'm positioning myself in my mind as the next Tony Stark, before really the world knew who Tony Stark was. And we weren't making weapons. This was actually software where we were connecting the medical records of the Army between 2 points, also secret locations that we won't reveal where those signals were coming from. But it was doing that work for the DoD, and now I'm on my way to having, all of these things that I didn't need and thought I wanted. And I would literally go home and get on eBay and I would look up private islands, thinking that one day I was going to have the capital to buy a private island and name it Shuster Land. And I really just stupid things. And so, Ralph, as I'm building this company, something happened on what was otherwise an ordinary Saturday that changed my life forever. And I know that's cliche, but this really was, where I was out on a Saturday night and I was in a horrific car accident in which I almost died. I broke my spine, nearly tore every ligament in my neck, had a number of severe internal injuries. And what we know about the brain is really, really interesting in terms of self-preservation. You have to understand that our brains basically exist to do one thing, and that's keep us alive. And we have a lot of really cool data, even going back to some of the early world wars, where we have letters from soldiers and they would see, like a mortar shell flying at them. And, what doesn't really happen is, like you see in the movies, your life is going to flash right before your eyes.
Right.
That's not really how it goes. What happens is that the brain slows down our perception of time, kind of like Neo in the Matrix when he sees those bullets just kind of moving
time
by him. Bullet time, right? That's what we experience. So in what was maybe 3 seconds, upon which I made my left-hand turn and the car goes flying through the intersection, slams into me, sends me into oncoming traffic, my airbag's going off, then a second car in the other lane smashes me and sends me back the other way, and ultimately a telephone pole stops my momentum, maybe 3 seconds. But in that period of time, it was very surreal for me, and I'm actually having a full-on conversation with myself in the moment. And that moment wasn't, oh, dear God, please let me live, and I promise tomorrow I'm going to go give Christmas presents to orphan boys and girls. I was dead. In my mind, I knew I was dead. And my first thoughts were, my parents are about to get a call. I knew they were out with their good friends, I think they had dinner and a movie kind of a thing, and they were going to get a call that I was dead. And how guilty and ashamed I was of that. And then my next thought, all in this 3 second span, was reflecting on the life I lived. The car was not going to come with me to the grave. My watch was not going to come with me to the grave, nor would all of these fandangled things that I was wanting to buy for myself going to come with me. And I had just realized that I had wasted so much of my life focused, in these last several years on nothing of consequence. And so I was resigned to the fact that, my end was near. And again, this was such a bizarre moment. Like I could see the center console crushing into my ribs, though I didn't feel anything. It really looked like a can of Coke just being crushed. There was this slow motion. I'm seeing little shards of my windshield floating in the air. Like, all of this is such a surreal moment. And spoiler alert, I didn't die. But, it took me a long time to convalesce, to really start thinking about making changes. And it still took me a while to get there, largely because of fear. But that's what really started me on the very different journey and doing what I'm doing today.
And tell us more about what you are doing today, and how do you help people, and who do you help? What evolved out of that experience, and how was that playing out for you now? So
I'll flash it forward a little bit. So I eventually walked away from that organization I was building just because I was absolutely miserable. I didn't know what my purpose was, so to speak. I had no idea what I was going to do when I grow up, but I just knew it wasn't that. And I joke a lot because if Instacart had existed back then, I have no idea what my life would be like. The only reason why I left my place of residence was to go get food. And I had been still feeling pretty down on myself. Now I'm kind of regretting this company and the time and the money and all of these people that I'm letting down. And one day I go to the grocery store and I hear these two women talking about their teenage daughters on social media. And I don't usually interrupt people's conversations, but I did this time very politely. And let them know, I had a background in technology, and here's how you can do X, Y, and Z to keep your kids safe. And long story short, that freaked them out, which was not my intent. But they said, come speak to our PTA, and I did, because I wasn't doing anything. And that was really the first moment that I was like, and I didn't ask for money. It was just felt really good to be up in front of 30 or 40 parents and terrifying them and giving them that information. And what's really funny is there was a guy in the audience who was in that city's cybercrime police. He was in the police department and on their cybercrime unit. I don't know why they didn't ask him to talk, but he came up afterwards and said, hey, you're really good, Richard. You can say things as a consumer, or he didn't say a consumer, he said as a civilian. I'm in that business mode. As a civilian, you can say things that we as law enforcement can't. Would you be willing to talk with us? And so now I'm on a speaking tour, right? And out of that, I found a path back to graduate school, got a master's in social work, then went further and got a doctorate in clinical psychology. And I know you're trivializing, like I'm compressing years of my life into a sentence. But then, within that work, got advanced training in forensic and neuropsychology. And as I'm out in the world, finally licensed and practicing, and I principally worked with sexually abused children. That was a lot of what I did diagnostically. I just felt like, okay, this is good, and I know the work I'm doing is important, but how can I make a difference on a larger scale? And I came up with the idea of doing this podcast called, and I came up with the name The Daily Helping: Food for the Brain, Knowledge from the Experts, Tools to Win at Life. And didn't know how I was going to get any guests on my show or how anything was going to happen, but just started emailing 100 well-known people every morning before I would go see my patients. And you know this as well as any other entrepreneur, 99% of the time you don't get a response. And then, 0.5% you'll get a no, and then the other, 0.5%, somebody will say yes. And so I started getting some yeses, and then the yeses became a lot of yeses. And now we're, I think, about 130 episodes into this. And it is called The Daily Helping, but we actually only air it weekly. So I give myself the right to expand this to a 5-day-a-week show eventually. But we've been doing this for over 2 years, and I've built a little bit of neuroscience kind of sneakily into my content, where my call to action every episode is to encourage the listener to commit an act of kindness, especially if they don't know who the person is, and do this every day and post in their social media feeds using the hashtag #MyDailyHelping. And the thing that I really want to bring to people's attention is that we as a society have become more focused on ourselves than at any point in human history. And social media has a lot to do with this. And, I'm not going to fully demonize social media outside of, calling it for what it is. It's a platform designed to make the people that created it and advertisers money. It's designed, I guess I am demonizing it. It's designed, and it's certainly, wait for Zuckerberg to put the red laser on my chest as I say this. It's designed, and the people that created this know this, that it's going to give you psychological well-being. You're going to get a little hit of dopamine, which is a pleasure hormone, every time somebody likes one of your posts. So there are addictive qualities to this. And so the whole system is designed to make you feel good, to allow you to promote yourself, and then in turn, then they get your information and sell it to their partners and all that. But here's the thing. We are hardwired as a species to feel good if we help other people. But that's not really where we're at as a society in our focus. So by having that call to action as part of my podcast, that enables me to get you to get into this habituated set of circumstances where you're doing good things, helping other people every day, and kind of flipping that switch. So that's the podcast, and it's this because you've got a really successful platform of your own. It's so much fun, and the things that have come out of it have been completely unexpected. I actually had a kid reach out to me not long after Thanksgiving in 2017, and tell me that because of the podcast, he heard me. I was a guest on Entrepreneur on Fire, and that episode popped up in his Twitter feed just before he was getting ready to compose a suicide tweet and put a gun in his mouth. And he wrote me this long email, which, I was tearful as I was reading it, about how, because of my podcast, he wanted to live and wanted to start a podcast for people with depression so that they always knew there was a light at the end of the tunnel. And I've kept up with him. I've helped him with that, actually. And now he's got a whole new life. And that, that specifically to prevent a suicide wasn't why I created the show, but that was probably the biggest, holy cow, this is really unreal. And, no matter what else happens, the show saved a life, and I'm so grateful for that. So it's led to a whole lot of other things I'm doing. It's led to my speaking career. It's enabled me to promote a charity that's very near and dear to me. I created a nonprofit for children called Every Kid Rocks. I know there's a time limit here. So the very high level of this is my wife and I almost lost our firstborn son. And when my wife went into the hospital at 31 weeks and had collapsed in pain, when we went into the hospital, they told us that the reason she was in pain was because he was kicking her sciatic nerve, which I think was his way of saying, hey, get me out of here and help me out. Because what the doctors told us is that my wife had been leaking amniotic fluid through a pinhole-sized hole in her cervix, and had we not come in that very day, our son would have suffocated to death in utero within the next 12 hours. And so he was born with a lot of problems, and they caused us tremendous, at the time, financial and emotional difficulties getting him the help that he needed. And now today, he's 6, he's perfect. I'm very grateful. Well, as a dad, every kid thinks their kid is perfect. But he literally, he had a misshapen head, and he didn't know he had a right side of his body for the first 8 months of his life. So now today, he's doing very well in school and has friends, and he's beautiful. And so we created Every Kid Rocks, my wife and I, so that we could help families not have to go through what we went through, and help those kids who need to reach their full potential. And so the podcast led to all of that, and the work I'm doing with Mars Industries as well.
Wonderful. The story really does so much to communicate this idea that we are hardwired to feel good when we're helping others. And just telling your story, that's quite a leap to go from, a kid that is contemplating the day when he can buy his own island to now having been through some experiences and experiencing a shift in priorities to where you really get more juice out of life by what you give and not what you are trying to get. You said we're hardwired to feel good when we're helping others, but it seems like that since so many people are unhappy and stressed out, perhaps it's because they are trying to feel good by helping themselves, and that's what your mission is, to help people to realize that by helping others, they can become a better version of themselves, make the world a better place, and by doing that, they're going to feel better.
That's precisely right. My mission in life is to help people become the best version of themselves, even if it's of no direct benefit to myself. So a little throwback to that Zig Ziglar quote you mentioned, which I love. And yes, in fact, it's interesting to go back to social media a little bit. There's a lot of research that suggests that there is an inverse correlation with respect to social media posting and happiness. And what the research has indicated is that people who post more, not only in terms of the volume and the voluminous nature of what they post, but the degree to which it's self-aggrandizing, that there's an inverse correlation between that and happiness. So the people that are oftentimes on their social media posting, look at me, look how great I am, they're actually less happy statistically than those who don't. So says the research. But the problem with that is well, the person who's hiding behind their keyboard secretly inside is dying a little bit each day when they're posting, this fake imaginary smile. Their neighbor and their connections and their friends, they don't know that. What they see is, man, Ralph's got an amazing life. My life sucks. Look at the restaurants Ralph goes to. Here's a picture of the lobster he had yesterday. Look at this vacation. He's golfing, 5 times a week. So we have in the early 2000s when the research started coming out about how the internet shifted from largely informational to not only transactional, but also where we had tools for the first time where people were able to make their own personal websites. So with the consumerization of the internet, you started seeing the emergence of what was described in the research as the trophy case presentation, and it certainly holds true today. So you're right. We have this cycle, and it is a customized 24-hour personalized information cycle, which sends us exactly what we think we want to see, where everybody else is doing incredible, and we feel like we have to measure up. But the thing is, we are absolutely hardwired to feel good when we do things for other people. So if any two people listening to this in their own secret compound somewhere behind their fences were to get connected, and we put them in a room, and person A gave somebody $1,000, and then person B received $1,000, and we had real-time diagnostic imaging tracking their brains. The same exact parts of the brains are lighting up. And so what that tells us is, this is not new stuff from a neurobiological standpoint. These are ancient mammalian systems. If you want to get really nerdy, this is called the mesolimbic pathway, and it's that ancient neural system of reward that's been around forever and pleasure. And so I 100% want to get people excited about doing good things for other people, helping other people first, especially in their businesses. And I love Bob Berg. I'm a huge fan of his, and he's been on my show, and we talked about the strategies he has in the Go Giver.
Yeah, he was on my show last week. We had a great conversation.
How about that? Yeah, he's absolutely phenomenal. And so one of the questions that I had asked Bob when he was on my platform is, Bob, is this just you, or how big is this movement getting? And he just said there's absolutely, and I've talked to a lot of people that I've kind of asked the same question in different spaces. There's absolutely a paradigm shift that we've seen probably in the last 10, 15 years, where businesses are starting to recognize the importance of not only helping their customers, but helping their employees. Again, there's that Zig Ziglar thing. If you help your employees achieve their goals, your bottom line as an organization by default is going to get what it wants to.
Absolutely. I mean, it sounds self-evident. It's like Columbus, anybody could have done what you did, Columbus, the critics said. And Columbus said, well, of course, once I showed you the way, anybody can follow. That's easy. It seems like what we're talking about is so self-evident, that you can change the world and feel better about yourself if you help other people get what they want first. I mean, that wisdom has been around a long time. Why is it so difficult for us to, and this is my real question is, are we going to have to go through a traumatic experience like you did to have this awakening and have this shift? Or is this something that we can intuitively realize as truth and begin to make these changes? What do you think?
So the answer is no, you don't have to go through a car accident or a like near-death set of circumstances to do this. What part of the issue is we are, as a society, extraordinarily focused on achievement. And what achievement means in Western culture is different than in a lot of other places in the world. But principally, we look at, from a professional standpoint, we look at status, right? So, the C-suite people, Fortune 100 companies, those are the type of jobs where people go, ooh, when a business card is handed out, and look at me, this, big shot C-suite level person. So we are chasing the glory a lot of times for the wrong reasons. We're chasing the money. I was, and I know I've encountered so many people that I've talked to and worked with who was like, it's been about the money. It hasn't been about the mission. It hasn't been about their values. And what I tell people is where you really need to start is be very clear and granular. And this, a process that you can do with this is literally just sit yourself down with a piece of paper and just start brainstorming. What are the things that matter to you? And I don't mean, having a certain brand of car or, a certain kind of home or what have you, but from a values standpoint. What's important to you. And then once you know your values, then you've got your list, and then you can, by process of elimination, tell yourself, okay, so I've got 10 on this list. What are my top 5? And you rank them, and then what are your top 3? And once you start getting very clear on your values, then you can start really getting excited and beginning this process of finding out what fires you up, what gets you jazzed up. Because for the vast majority of people in our society, it's not their jobs. And so that's half the problems, that if you loved what you did, that solves so much of all of this, Ralph. And it's so interesting. Forbes did a study on the C-suite, and they looked at their lives, and they looked at a number of factors. And they didn't get all the CEOs, but they got a lot. And we generally, again, the C-suite, for that group of people in this country in particular, we would consider the elite of elite. And these are the people that should have the most access to tools to do whatever they want. And yet overwhelmingly, a large number of these people expressed that their marriages were failed, that their health was poor, that they had tremendous regrets that their kids have grown up and gone off to college, and they have no relationship with them because all they did was work, and they wish they could do that over again. So it's not just the glory that matters. It's about being able to do things on your time. And listen, I'm a parent. I've got 2 kids. If you're listening to this and you've got a good job, there's no shame in that. There's so many people that have achieved incredible things that have worked a job as long as they needed to as an employee, a good employee, until they were able to make their own dreams come true. But make your own dreams come true. Don't build somebody else's dreams. And so by finding, to bring it back to what I was talking about, when you know what's important to you, and if you're a way to tie that into an altruistic flair, so to speak, to where you're helping other people, if you can do that and make money at it, you will be happy and fulfilled every day of your life. It just is. And I've interviewed far too many people that are doing just that to think anything to the contrary.
And I agree 100%. And there's a couple of challenges that come up with that. And it's for people in the helping profession. And a lot of the people that are listening to the show, they do want to change the world. They do want to be a force for good. They're healers, therapists, counselors, coaches, consultants, gifted people, but they haven't made the connection to how can I help the world and change the world and do the good that I want to do and make the money that I need to make to live. So that they haven't quite, they don't feel like they're able to fulfill that good purpose that they want to fulfill because they haven't worked out the money issue yet. What would you say to someone struggling with that?
A few things. Number one, it has been my observation, and I haven't done any research on this, so you can't hold a gun to my head and make me say this is 100% true, but this is my opinion, as that generally speaking, people that are in the helping profession, so I'm talking about social workers, life coaches, therapists in particular, are some of the worst business people I've ever met in my life. and the reason, a big part of the reason why is because they have a dichotomous relationship with money, in that they want to help people, but there's a part of them that feels that there's an exploitative aspect to getting paid for what you do. And I used to run into this all the time. And so what I would say to people is there's a way that you've got to get clarity on that first, because if that's your hang up, then you need to really figure out why that is. And what I would say is that if you're not charging what you're worth, you're doing yourself a disservice and you're doing the client a disservice, because I don't care what profession you're in. If you don't feel you're being adequately compensated, you are not at your best. Your level of energy is just not going to be as optimal as it could be. And so if you're trying to help other people get better, but there's a part of you that's not fully engaged because of the money thing, you're not doing them the service that you could be doing. What you're talking about is in part of why I started my third company, Mars Industries, because that was something that I saw with therapists and coaches and some things, and wanted to create something that was unique to the industry and made a lot of changes in the human performance and assessment arena. So I did that. But I know as a psychologist and a social worker that what you're talking about is right, in my opinion anyway, like I said, I didn't research it, but I believe this to be a systemic issue. And I remember very clearly in graduate school one day, one of the more successful private practitioners in the community where I was attending my doctoral program came in and they did a lunch and learn. And so it was how to start a private practice. And the very first thing this guy said when he opened his mouth, and this guy, I know him. He's a great guy, very successful. He said, you as a clinician have to understand that if you're not trying to maximize your potential, your capability to make money, then this is just a hobby for you and you're not taking it seriously. And I saw a lot of my classmates make disgusted faces. And then after he left, called him a money grubber and all of these things. And that's the problem, that there is a perception in that space that there are these things about money that are bad. And I am here to tell you that's not so.
Very, very powerful. Before our time gets away, I want to ask what you're working on right now that's got you really excited that you'd like to share with our listeners, because I know you've got a lot going on. And so tell us what's on your plate and how our listeners can find out more.
Absolutely. So we have this issue, and you talked about it. So as a psychologist, one of the things that greatly aggravates me is the assessment industry. I have generally felt the assessment industry to be probably the most greedy industry that I've ever encountered in any vertical. Number one, it's not in any way inclusive. The people who need access to help often don't get it. A lot of it is driven by the insurance industry, in which basically the instruments are designed to find things wrong with you so that it can be reimbursed. It's kind of like this really sick and twisted circle of life. And I wanted to be a disruptive force in the assessment industry in the way that Michael Dell was in the PC space in the late 90s. And so I created Mars Industries to buck all of these trends. One, I wanted to create instruments that told people what's right about them, in addition to things that they could start working on to fix. So that was the first thing that I wanted to do.
That's a powerful distinction just by itself. What's right with you instead of just what's wrong.
And people aren't doing that. And certainly not to the degree that they should be. Number two, I wanted to create a system in which the instruments were available and accessible to anybody who needed them, that they were affordable, that there weren't these gatekeepers and systems in place to keep people from having access to the tools. And I also wanted those that helped us help other people be able to benefit financially. So I built the entire thing on an affiliate model. And so we're in three spaces right now: human performance, addiction and recovery, and PTSD for veterans. And so we're doing some very different things, of course, with all of them. And I'm very proud of all the work that we're doing. The one that probably would resonate most powerfully with your audience is what we're doing in the human performance space. And so we have an instrument called POWERS, which stands for the Predictor of World-Class Excellence Rating Scales, in which what a user does who sits down for the 15 minutes it takes to complete the POWERS is they get to find out algorithmically where they rate on 21 dimensions empirically associated with success in life. And notice I didn't just say success in business. Business is a part of it. Right. But we look at relationships outside of work. We look at physical wellness. We look at all these different things, interpersonal intelligence, and these really, really nuanced areas of success that haven't really been put together in one tool until now. And so everything is algorithmically generated and you get your results instantly. And there's a broad base of applications for this. So we have a certification program, and we have coaches and consultants who are using this to begin their therapy or their coaching as kind of like a baseline to see where that person is at. We have people using this as pre-employment screeners. We have this in large corporations where people are building teams with it. And so I'm extraordinarily proud of the work that we're doing with Mars. And again, I'm doing, my wife will probably say too many things, but everything that I'm doing for me drills back to that mission. Hey, we are trying to make a difference. And so, the Mars Industries, my charity, my podcast, these things all go back to that mission for me of helping people become the best versions of themselves. And I know that if everybody is kind of vibrating at that optimal level, the world is absolutely going to be a better place. So, with the powers, going back to that, I want to do something for your audience, and I love doing this because it's fun. And it helps a ton of people. So what we have along with this assessment is we have something called our Dream Job Guide. And even if you're an entrepreneur and you're on your own and building something, what this is going to do is highlight for you take your test results and you're going to get what's known as your 3 up and 3 down. And those are your top 3 strengths as well as 3 focus areas for you. And you're going to be able to take that 3 up and match them up to this guide and see what professions, what characteristics you have that'll ultimately make you the most happiest and successful in the world, in the business world in particular. And so if you use the code REBEL when you purchase the powers at seekyourpowers.com, and again, that's www.seekyourpowers.com, with that code REBEL, as you add that to your cart, you can get that guide for free for anybody listening to this. Happy to do that.
Wow, that sounds great. So seekyourpowers.com and use that code REBEL to get that for free. And you can download that resource, discover what your powers are. And there's more than one, right? And you're saying 3 up and 3 down.
Right. So you're going to find out where you rate. So there's 21 of these dimensions that we look at. So you're going to find out which of the 3, and you're going to find out where you rate on all of them, but you're going to be able to see what are your top 3 superpowers.
Wonderful. So this is the science of helping other people. Before you can help others, you have to understand what your superpower is. We talk about it in terms of value. What is your value? What do you bring to the world? What do you bring to the marketplace? Same thing is before you can help other people to become all that they can be, you have to know who you are. You have to become all you can be. And that's not just a motto for the Army. That's a motto for life and for business. So this has been a really intriguing and I would dare say enlightening conversation. It adds and builds upon the conversations we've had recently as we try to bring business to a new level of service and changing the world and learning how to make money while we make a difference so that we can make a greater impact on the world. I think this is super. Dr. Richard, our time is almost gone. Actually, it's over, but I don't care. I'm the boss. I can do what I want to do. But just by way of leaving us with a final thought or a word of wisdom, what would you say just to kind of sum everything together?
I'm going to end with what I end every episode of my own show with, which is a call to action to everybody listening to this. And that's go out there today, do something nice for somebody, especially if you don't know who they are. Post in your social media feeds using the hashtag MyDailyHelping, because science tells us the happiest people are those that help others.
Wonderful. Dr. Richard Shuster is a clinical psychologist, keynote speaker. He is the CEO of Mars Industries, a renowned media expert, and the host of the Daily Helping podcast, which is regularly downloaded in over 100 countries. If you want to discover your powers, go to seekyourpowers.com, use the coupon code REBEL to download that free resource. You can also check out Dr. Richard at drrichardschuster.com. Well, Dr. Richard, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate your wisdom, and thanks for the conversation. I appreciate it.
Right back at you, Ralph. I loved being here. Thanks for having me on your show.
You've been listening to Rebelpreneur Radio with Ralph Brogden. Download the show notes and much more at rebelpreneur.com.